Snow fell in gentle flakes across Main Street, catching the colored lights that stretched between lampposts. The town square glowed with a massive Christmas tree, its star twinkling against the darkening sky. Storefronts displayed miniature winter wonderlands, with mechanical Santas waving to no one. Most shops had already closed early for Christmas Eve. Marcus Kane leaned forward on his Harley, the rumble of the engine vibrating through his body. The cold bit at his exposed neck, despite the heavy leather jacket and the black bandana tied around his throat. His fingers, wrapped in fingerless gloves, ached from the winter chill, but he didn't care. Physical discomfort was something he understood. He slowed at a red light and watched a family hurry across the street. Father, mother, two kids bundled in puffy coats. The smallest one, maybe 5 years old, skipped through the crosswalk. The father reached down and swung the child onto his shoulders. The sound of their laughter carried through the cold air. Marcus looked away, twisting the throttle harder when the light changed. The engine growled like an angry beast as he accelerated. Christmas. He hated everything about it. As he passed the town's only department store, he glimpsed families inside making last-minute purchases. Shopping carts piled with wrapped gifts. Children pointing excitedly at toys. Parents checking their watches, rushing to finish before dinner. A memory surfaced. Unwanted. Painful. Marcus at 8 years old, standing outside a store window just like this one, stomach growling, watching other kids pick out presents while his mother was passed out at home. The emptiness of their refrigerator. The silence of their apartment on Christmas morning. Not worth remembering, he muttered to himself behind his helmet. He turned down Cedar Street, away from the bright lights of downtown. The snow was falling heavier now, dusting his shoulders and the handlebars of his motorcycle. Houses here displayed inflatable snowmen and plastic reindeer. Warm light spilled from windows where families gathered around dining tables. Marcus felt the familiar knot of anger and emptiness tighten in his chest. 28 years old, and holidays still made him feel like that forgotten kid. He'd spent his childhood hungry while other kids opened presents. He'd spent his teenage years as a runaway, sleeping under bridges while families sang carols. Now, he had the club. Not much of a family, maybe, but at least they didn't pretend to be something they weren't. Tonight they'd drink until the memories blurred, play cards for cash, and ignore the date on the calendar. The neighborhood thinned out as he approached the industrial side of town. Fewer decorations here, just the occasional wreath or single string of lights. He passed the shuttered hardware store, the gas station with its flickering sign, the bakery with the closed sign hanging in the frosted window. The smell of baked goods still lingered in the air, sugar and cinnamon and warm bread. Marcus's stomach rumbled. He hadn't eaten since morning. The club would have food, though mostly as an excuse to drink more. As he passed the bakery, something caught his eye in the narrow alley alongside the building. A small movement near the dumpsters. Marcus slowed, curious. Probably just a stray cat looking for scraps. He turned his handlebars slightly, angling the bike's headlight down the alley. What he saw made him brake hard, boots scraping against the snowy pavement. Not a cat. A child. A tiny girl, no more than 5 years old, standing on tiptoes to reach into a metal trash can. She wore an oversized sweater with sleeves that hung past her fingers. Her small face was pinched with concentration, cheeks flushed red from the cold. She didn't seem to notice Marcus, or the bright headlight illuminating her like a spotlight as she carefully dug through the discarded bakery trash. Marcus sat frozen on his idling motorcycle. The child pulled out a crumpled napkin, examining it closely, before reaching back into the trash can. Time seemed to stop as snow continued to fall silently around them. Marcus cut the engine, letting silence settle over the alley. The sudden quiet felt heavy, broken only by the soft sound of small fingers rustling through trash. Without the rumble of his Harley, he could hear the child's quiet breathing and the occasional frustrated sigh when she found nothing worth keeping. He remained seated on his bike for a long moment, unsure what to do. The girl still hadn't noticed him. She was too focused on her task, standing on her tiptoes, small body stretched to reach deeper into the metal trash can. Her determination struck something inside him. A memory, a feeling he'd rather forget. The wind picked up, whistling between the brick buildings that formed the narrow alley. It swept snow in tiny whirlwinds around the girl's feet. She shivered, but didn't stop her search. The oversized sweater she wore, faded blue with some kind of cartoon character on the front, hung past her small hands. Each time she reached up, the sleeves slid down, exposing thin wrists that looked too fragile for the harsh December cold. Marcus slowly swung his leg over his motorcycle and stood. His boots crunched in the fresh snow as he took a step forward. Still, the girl didn't look up. Her dark hair hung in messy tangles around her face, partially hiding her expression of intense concentration. "You're going to freeze out here," Marcus said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. The girl jumped at the sound, finally noticing him. Her eyes widened as she took in his full appearance. The leather jacket with patches, the chains hanging from his belt, the tattoos visible on his neck above his bandana. Marcus knew what he looked like to most people. Dangerous. He expected her to run. Most kids did when they saw him. But she didn't. She simply stared at him, her small hands gripping the edge of the trash can. Her eyes, large and dark, studied him with unexpected calmness. "I have gloves," she said quietly, holding up hands covered by the sweater sleeves. "See?" Marcus took another step closer, moving slowly. "Those aren't gloves. Those are just your sleeves." She considered this, looking at her hands as if this thought had never occurred to her. "They keep my hands warm anyway." The wind gusted again, sending a flurry of snowflakes between them. The girl's teeth chattered slightly, though she tried to hide it by pressing her lips together. "Where's your coat?" Marcus asked, glancing around the empty alley as if expecting an adult to appear. "At home," she answered simply. "I was only coming for a minute." Marcus noticed her shoes. Sneakers with a hole forming at one toe, completely inappropriate for the snow. Her thin leggings did little to protect her legs from the cold. Everything about her screamed neglect, a sight Marcus recognized all too well from his own childhood. "You shouldn't be out alone," he said, softening his tone, "especially not on Christmas Eve." The girl's expression became serious. "I had to come. Tonight's the best night." "The best night for what?" Instead of answering, she turned back to the trash can, stretching up again on her toes. She was too small to see properly inside, her fingertips barely reaching over the edge. Before he could think about it, Marcus closed the distance between them. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to frighten her. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked gently. The girl paused and looked at him, no fear in her eyes, just a matter-of-fact expression that seemed too old for such a young face. "I'm looking for cookies," she explained calmly. "Mom says they throw away the extras on Christmas Eve. The bakery lady can't sell day-old cookies tomorrow because it's Christmas and they'll be closed." She pointed at the back door of the bakery. "Sometimes they put them in napkins first, so they're still clean." Marcus felt something twist inside his chest. The casual way she said it, as if digging through trash for food was the most normal thing in the world, hit him harder than he expected. "Your mom told you to look in the garbage for food?" he asked, trying to keep the anger from his voice. The girl shook her head. "No. She just told me they throw them away. I decided to look by myself." She smiled slightly. "It's like a treasure hunt." Marcus knelt down to be at her eye level, a position that felt strange to him. People usually backed away when he got close. But the little girl didn't flinch. "What's your name, kid?" he asked. She brushed a dark strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear with small fingers. "Lily," she answered, her voice clear, despite the cold making her shiver. What's yours?" For a second, Marcus hesitated. People in town knew his name, knew to stay away from him. But this child looked at him without a hint of fear. "I'm Marcus," he said. Lily nodded, as if they were simply meeting at a playground. "Hello, Marcus." "How old are you, Lily?" She held up her hand, fingers splayed wide. "5. Almost 6, she added importantly. 5 years old. Out alone in the freezing cold on Christmas Eve digging through trash for food? Marcus felt a familiar anger building inside him, not at Lily, but at whoever should be taking care of her. "Where's your mom?" he asked, working to keep his voice gentle. Lily's eyes drifted toward the street. "Working. She cleans offices at night." She pulled at her sweater sleeves. "She told me to stay in our apartment and not to open the door, but—" Her voice trailed off. "But you got hungry, waiting," Marcus finished for her. She nodded, looking slightly guilty. "I'm supposed to eat the sandwich she left, but I already ate it after school. And then my tummy was making noise again." Marcus glanced at his watch. Nearly 8 o'clock. This tiny child had been alone for hours. "Your mom leaves you by yourself at night?" He couldn't keep the edge from his voice. Lily didn't seem bothered by his tone. "Only when she has to work. She says I'm a big girl." Pride crept into her voice. "I know how to lock the door and everything." Marcus thought about his own childhood. Left alone for days sometimes while his mother disappeared on benders. He'd learned to fend for himself by 8. Lily was doing the same, but even younger. "Where do you live?" he asked. She pointed vaguely down the street. "In the apartments by the laundry place. The ones with the broken steps." Marcus knew the building. Run-down units rented to people who couldn't afford anything better. Snow was falling more heavily now, collecting on Lily's hair and shoulders. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint that worried him. "Listen, Lily," he said. "I think the bakery already threw away their cookies, and someone probably took them." He gestured to the nearly empty trash can. "Nothing good left in there." Disappointment crossed her face. "Oh. But I know a place we can get something warm to eat. Real food, not trash cookies." Hope brightened her expression, then quickly dimmed. "I'm not supposed to go anywhere with strangers." Marcus almost smiled. At least someone had taught her that much. "That's a good rule," he agreed. "Your mom is right about that." He thought for a moment. "What if we go somewhere public, with lots of people around? There's a diner just down the street. They have pancakes." "Pancakes?" Lily's eyes widened. "With syrup?" "As much syrup as you want." She bit her lower lip, considering. "Mom won't be home until morning." Marcus waited, letting her decide. He wouldn't force her to come with him, even though leaving her alone in this alley seemed unthinkable. Finally she nodded. "Okay, but just for pancakes. Then I have to go home." "Deal," Marcus said. "It's pretty cold to walk. Is it okay if we take my motorcycle?" Lily's gaze shifted to his Harley, and for the first time, excitement replaced the solemn look on her face. "A real motorcycle? I've never been on one." "It's just a short ride," Marcus assured her. "I'll go slow." He stood, brushing snow from his knees, and walked over to his bike. After a moment of thought, he unzipped his leather jacket and took it off, leaving him in just a long-sleeved thermal shirt. He felt the cold immediately bite at his skin, but ignored it. "Here," he said, holding the jacket out to Lily. "Put this on. It'll keep you warm." She approached cautiously and let him drape the enormous jacket around her. It hung to her ankles like a leather dress, making her look even smaller. "It smells like gasoline," she observed, but pulled it tight around herself anyway. "Sorry about that," Marcus said. "Hazard of riding a bike." He carefully lifted her onto the motorcycle seat, positioning her in front of him, where he could keep her secure with one arm. "Hold on tight to the handlebars, okay? But don't touch any of the switches or buttons." Lily nodded seriously, her small hands gripping the chrome handlebars. Like this? Perfect, he said. Ready for pancakes? Her smile was the first genuine one he'd seen. Ready! Marcus started his motorcycle with a low rumble, keeping one arm securely around Lily's tiny frame. His leather jacket swallowed her whole, making her look like a small bundle perched on the massive bike. The snow fell in gentle flakes, catching in her dark hair and melting on her flushed cheeks. "Hold on tight," he said, and felt her small hands grip the handlebar. He drove slower than he ever had before, barely above walking speed. Each bump in the road made him tighten his protective hold around her. The thought of this child falling struck a fear in him he hadn't felt in years. Christmas lights blurred past them as they moved through the quiet streets, their colors reflecting off the fresh snow. Lily seemed mesmerized by the ride, her head turning to take in the decorated storefronts and glowing homes. She didn't speak, but Marcus could feel her excitement in the way she sat up straighter each time they turned a corner. The diner sat on the corner of Main Street, its windows foggy with warmth and decorated with paper snowflakes. The neon "Open" sign buzzed in the window, casting a red glow on the snowy sidewalk. Marcus pulled up directly in front of the entrance and cut the engine. "We're here," he said, carefully lifting Lily off the motorcycle. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she looked up at him. "That was fun. Can we go faster next time?" Marcus nearly smiled. "Let's get some food in you first." A bell jingled as they pushed open the door. Warm air and the smell of coffee and fried food rushed to greet them. The diner was mostly empty, just an elderly couple in one booth and a man in a trucker cap at the counter. Christmas music played softly from speakers overhead. Behind the counter, a middle-aged waitress looked up from wiping down the surface. Her eyes immediately narrowed at the sight of Marcus, his tattooed arms visible now without his jacket. The woman's hand instinctively moved toward the phone, as if preparing to call for help. Then, her gaze dropped to Lily, bundled in the oversized leather jacket. Her expression shifted from suspicion to concern. "Take any booth you like," she called, her voice cautious, but no longer hostile. Marcus guided Lily to a booth by the window, away from the other customers. She climbed onto the vinyl seat, the jacket pooling around her like a leather tent. Her small face looked even paler under the bright diner lights, her cheeks flushed from the cold. The waitress approached, menus in hand. She placed them on the table, her eyes moving between Marcus and Lily with obvious curiosity. "What can I get you folks?" she asked, addressing the question more to Lily than to Marcus. Before Lily could answer, Marcus spoke up. "She'll have pancakes with extra syrup, hot chocolate, and a grilled cheese sandwich." He looked at Lily. "Sound good?" Lily's eyes widened at the list of food, as if he'd just offered her a feast. She nodded eagerly. "And for you?" the waitress asked, her pen poised over her notepad. "Just coffee." The waitress, her name tag read Doris, gave him a long look. "Food's half price tonight. Christmas Eve special," she said, though Marcus suspected there was no such special. "You sure that's all you want?" "Coffee's fine," Marcus repeated. Doris nodded and walked away, glancing back at them over her shoulder. Lily took off the leather jacket now that she was warm, folding it carefully and placing it on the seat beside her. Marcus noticed holes in her sweater and how thin her wrists looked. Something twisted in his chest. "You like pancakes?" he asked, just to fill the silence. "I had them once at school," she said, "for someone's birthday." The simplicity of her answer made his jaw tighten. Doris returned quickly with the hot chocolate, topped with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. "Thought you might want this while you wait," she said to Lily, with a gentle smile. She set down Marcus's coffee without comment. Lily stared at the hot chocolate like it was made of gold. She carefully wrapped both hands around the mug and took a tiny sip, leaving a whipped cream mustache on her upper lip. "Thank you," she said to Doris, then turned to Marcus. "And thank you for the motorcycle ride." When the food arrived, Lily's eyes grew wide at the sight of the tall stack of pancakes drowning in syrup and the golden grilled cheese sandwich cut into triangles. She ate slowly, savoring each bite as if memorizing the taste. Marcus watched as she discreetly wrapped half the grilled cheese in a napkin and slid it into her pocket. She did the same with part of a pancake, carefully folding it to contain the syrup. "You don't have to save that," Marcus said quietly. "You can eat it all now if you're hungry." Lily looked up, surprised at being caught. "It's for later," she explained simply. "Or maybe for Mom if she's hungry when she comes home." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. He'd done the same thing as a kid, hiding food for when he might need it more. The habit was hard to break, even years later. "Lily," he said gently as she finished the last of her hot chocolate, "where exactly do you live? I should take you home when you're done eating." Marcus pulled a worn leather wallet from his back pocket. He counted out several bills and left them on the table with a generous tip. Doris gave him a small nod as she collected the money, her earlier suspicion softening around the edges. "You two be careful out there," she said, glancing toward the window. "Snow's coming down harder now." Lily slid out of the booth, her belly full for what Marcus guessed was the first time in a while. She had a contentment about her that didn't match her circumstances, a quiet dignity that reminded him of himself at that age, though he'd never had her gentle spirit. "Got something else for you," Marcus said, reaching into his saddlebag by the door. He pulled out a second leather jacket, smaller than his riding jacket, but still much too large for her tiny frame. It was the spare he kept for unexpected weather changes. "This'll keep you warmer than that sweater." Lily's eyes widened as he draped it around her shoulders. The sleeves hung well past her fingertips, and the bottom nearly touched the floor. "It's like a dress," she said, spinning around once to make the jacket twirl. "Hold still," Marcus said, crouching down to roll the sleeves up several times until her hands appeared. He zipped it up to her chin, and the collar rose to her ears. "There. That should keep the cold out." Outside, the snow had thickened. What started as gentle flakes earlier now fell in earnest, coating the street in a blanket of white that muffled all sound. The Christmas lights along Main Street glowed through the falling snow like distant stars. "Ready to head home?" Marcus asked. Lily nodded, her face serious within the frame of the leather jacket. Mom might be worried if she came home early. Marcus lifted her onto the motorcycle again, making sure she was secure in front of him. The leather jacket swallowed her completely, making her look like a small package being delivered somewhere important. He started the engine, its rumble cutting through the quiet night. Snowflakes melted instantly on the warm metal as they pulled away from the curb. Marcus drove with intense focus, aware of every patch of snow that might make the tires slip. The streets were empty now, as families settled in for Christmas Eve celebrations. "Which way?" he asked at the first intersection. "That way," Lily pointed with a sleeve-covered hand. "Past the laundry place." Marcus followed her directions, turning down progressively narrower streets. The Christmas decorations grew sparser as they moved away from the town center. Here, a single strand of lights hung in a window. There, a plastic Santa stood guard on a small porch. "There it is!" Lily called out suddenly, pointing to a 3-story brick building with peeling paint and a sagging front porch. Most of the windows were dark, though a few glowed with weak yellow light. No decorations brightened its worn exterior. Marcus pulled up to the curb and turned off the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy, broken only by the soft hiss of snowflakes landing around them. "Which apartment is yours?" he asked, helping her off the motorcycle. "Number 12, Lily said, pointing to the second floor. "It's up those stairs and down the hall." Marcus nodded, scanning the building with practiced eyes. The security door hung slightly ajar, its lock broken. A bare bulb flickered weakly in the stairwell. He recognized the signs of neglect. A landlord who collected rent, but made few repairs. "Lead the way," he said, following a few steps behind, as Lily trudged through the snow toward the entrance. Inside, the hallway smelled of old cooking and cigarettes. The carpet was worn thin in the center from years of footsteps. Lily seemed unfazed, making her way confidently up the stairs with Marcus following. They reached a door with peeling green paint, and the number 12 hanging slightly crooked. Lily ran the last few steps and knocked eagerly. "Mom! Mom, I'm home!" she called out, bouncing slightly on her toes. Marcus hung back in the hallway, keeping a respectful distance. He'd make sure she got safely inside, then disappear back into the night. His job was done. He'd found the kid food, kept her warm, and brought her home. Nothing more to it. The seconds stretched as they waited for someone to answer the door. The door swung open suddenly. A woman in her early 30s stood framed in the dim light of the apartment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her face showed the lines of someone who rarely got enough sleep. She wore a gray uniform with the name tag, Elena, still pinned to her chest. Her eyes widened first with relief at seeing Lily, then instantly narrowed with stark terror when they landed on Marcus. "Mommy!" Lily exclaimed happily. "Look who brought me home. He bought me pancakes and hot chocolate." Elena's face drained of color. Her body went completely rigid, one hand still gripping the doorknob so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her gaze locked on the leather vest Marcus wore, specifically on the patch sewn onto the front, the insignia of his motorcycle club. "Lily, come here," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "Right now." Marcus took a step back, raising his hand slightly. "Ma'am, Don't!" Elena cut him off sharply. Her eyes darted up and down the hallway, checking for others. "Please, just don't." Lily looked between them, her small face creasing with confusion. "Mom, he's nice. He helped me when I was looking for cookies." "Cookies!" Elena's voice cracked as she reached out and grabbed Lily's arm, pulling her firmly toward the doorway. "What were you doing outside? You were supposed to stay in the apartment." "I got hungry," Lily said softly, lowering her eyes. "And the bakery throws away cookies on Christmas Eve. You said so." Elena's expression crumpled momentarily with guilt and pain before hardening again as she looked back at Marcus. "Thank you for bringing my daughter home," she said stiffly, "but you need to leave. Now." Marcus hadn't moved. He recognized the look in Elena's eyes. Pure, undiluted fear. Not the kind strangers usually showed when they saw his leather and tattoos. This was deeper, more specific. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Marcus said quietly. "I found her digging through a trash can behind the bakery. Just wanted to make sure she got home safe." Elena's breathing quickened. Her hand reached behind her, fumbling along the wall inside the apartment door. Marcus guessed she was searching for a weapon. A baseball bat, maybe, or a kitchen knife. "I know who you are," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "What club you're with?" Marcus glanced down at his vest, understanding washing over him. This wasn't just about his intimidating appearance. This woman knew something about his motorcycle club. "Listen, I don't know what your issue is with the—" "You need to go," Elena interrupted, finally pulling Lily completely behind her and stepping partially in front of the doorway. She stood straight, despite her obvious exhaustion and fear, a protective barrier between her daughter and the perceived threat. "Please, we don't want any trouble." Lily peeked around her mother's legs, still wearing Marcus's oversized leather jacket. "But Mom, he's Motorcycle Santa. He gave me food." Elena's eyes darted to the jacket, noticing it for the first time. Fresh alarm crossed her face. "Take it off, Lily," she whispered urgently. "Give the man his jacket back." "It's fine," Marcus said, shaking his head. "She can keep it. It's cold out." Elena stared at him, bewilderment mixing with her fear. Her shoulders tensed as she pressed Lily further behind her, one arm reaching back protectively. "I don't know what game you're playing," she said, her voice slightly stronger now, fueled by maternal instinct. "But if you or anyone in your club comes near my daughter again—" She left the threat unfinished, though they both knew she had no real power to back it up. Marcus could see her trembling, but there was steel in her spine. She might be terrified, but she would fight to her last breath to protect her child. He respected that. It reminded him of something he'd rarely seen in his life: pure, unconditional love. The hallway fell quiet, except for the distant sound of Christmas music playing from another apartment. Marcus took another step back, giving Elena more space. The fear in her eyes bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "Look," he said, keeping his voice low and even. "I was just riding by the bakery when I saw your little girl digging through the trash. She was looking for food. I couldn't just leave her there in the cold." Elena's eyes remained fixed on him, still wary, still protective. Her arm stayed firmly around Lily, who looked up at her mother with confusion. "He really did help me, Mommy," Lily whispered. "I was trying to find those cookies you said they throw away, but then he took me to the diner instead. The pancakes had chocolate chips." A flash of shame crossed Elena's face. She glanced down at Lily, then back to Marcus. "You just found her and brought her home?" Elena asked, suspicion heavy in her voice. Marcus nodded slowly. "That's all. I don't know what you think is happening here, but I'm not part of whatever you're afraid of." Lily tugged at her mother's uniform pants. "He even let me ride on his motorcycle. It was so cool, Mommy. And look, he gave me his jacket because I was cold." Elena's eyes moved from the leather jacket engulfing her daughter to Marcus's face. For the first time, she really looked at him. Not just his intimidating outfit or the club insignia, but his actual features. Her brow furrowed slightly. "I don't understand," she said, her voice still tight, but with confusion now edging out some of the fear. "Why would you help her?" The question struck Marcus as odd. That anyone would need a reason to help a hungry child seemed strange to him. "Because she needed it," he answered simply. Elena continued studying his face, her eyes narrowing as if trying to place him somewhere in her memory. Her head tilted slightly to one side. "Have we—" she began, then shook her head. "No, that's not possible." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "I should get going," he said, turning slightly toward the stairwell. "Just wanted to make sure she got home safe." "Wait," Elena said suddenly. Her hand left the doorframe, no longer braced for danger. "Your eyes. I remember your eyes." Marcus froze. He didn't recognize this woman at all. Elena took a half step forward, still keeping Lily behind her, but no longer looking terrified. "That scar," she said, pointing to a small mark beside his left eyebrow. "You got that from falling against a radiator. At the shelter." The word shelter hit Marcus like a physical blow. Memories flooded back. A bitter, cold night years ago. Wind cutting through his thin jacket. His teenage body shaking so hard his teeth chattered. Hunger gnawing at his stomach. Desperation. "It was you," Elena whispered, her eyes widening with recognition. "You were that boy. The runaway." Marcus stared at her, momentarily speechless. Images flashed through his mind. A warm room with folding tables. A young woman with kind eyes serving soup. The same woman who had found him a blanket when all the beds were full, who had given him an extra pair of socks because his were soaked through. "Northside Shelter," she continued, certainty growing in her voice. 6 or 7 years ago. You couldn't have been more than 15 or 16. You were freezing, refused to talk to anyone. Marcus felt like the floor beneath him had suddenly disappeared. The woman standing before him, this frightened, protective mother, was the same person who had once given him the only kindness he'd known during the worst days of his life. "You worked there," he said, the memory solidifying. "You gave me soup. And a blanket." Elena nodded slowly, disbelief washing across her face. "You slept in the corner. Left before morning." A small, stunned laugh escaped her. "And now you found my daughter." They stood facing each other, Separated by years and circumstances, but connected by an act of kindness neither had forgotten. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a strange sense that the world had just tilted on its axis, rearranging everything he thought he knew. "It's you," he said quietly, the realization leaving him stunned. "Would you like to come in?" Elena asked, her voice still carrying traces of disbelief. "Just for a minute?" Marcus hesitated, glancing down the hallway. "I don't want to intrude." "Please," she said, stepping back from the doorway. "It's the least I can do after you helped Lily." Marcus nodded and followed them inside. The apartment was small and dimly lit, with mismatched furniture that had seen better days. A tiny artificial Christmas tree sat in the corner, with just a few ornaments and a paper star on top. What struck him immediately was how cold it was, not much warmer than the hallway outside. Lily skipped ahead and flopped onto a worn couch covered with a colorful blanket. "Can he stay for cookies, Mommy?" "Oh, wait, we don't have any." Elena's cheeks flushed slightly. "Lily, why don't you go put on your warm pajamas while I talk to Mr. She paused, looking at Marcus. "Kane," he supplied. "Marcus Kane." "While I talk to Mr. Kane," she finished. Once Lily had disappeared into a small bedroom, Elena gestured toward the kitchen table. "Please, sit. I'm sorry it's so cold in here. The heater's been acting up." Marcus sat down cautiously, feeling strangely out of place with his tattooed hands against the faded flowered tablecloth. "It's fine." Elena filled a kettle and set it on the stove. "I can make tea if you'd like." "Sure," Marcus said, though he couldn't remember the last time he'd had tea. They sat in awkward silence until Elena spoke. "I can't believe you're the same person. That night at the shelter. You were so young." Marcus nodded, uncomfortable with the memory. "Wasn't my best time?" "You wouldn't tell anyone your name," Elena continued. "You just sat in the corner shivering. Your shoes were soaked through." "You brought me dry socks," Marcus said quietly, "and soup. No one had asked if I was hungry in a long time." Elena's eyes softened. The shelter was overcrowded that night. All the beds were taken. "I found you that old army blanket from the storage room." "I remember," Marcus said. The kettle whistled, and Elena rose to pour the water into 2 chipped mugs. "I looked for you the next morning," she admitted, placing a mug in front of him. "But you were already gone." Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "Couldn't risk staying. Social services would have picked me up." Elena nodded, understanding. "Where did you go after that?" Marcus shrugged. "Around. Stayed with different people. Did odd jobs." He left out the parts about sleeping under bridges and eventually finding the motorcycle club that became his surrogate family, and all the trouble that came with it. "And now?" she asked. "I get by," he answered simply. Elena smiled faintly. "That makes 2 of us." She looked toward Lily's room. "It's just been the 2 of us since she was born. Her father wasn't in the picture." Marcus nodded, not pressing for details. He glanced around the apartment, noticing things his trained eye couldn't miss. The stack of past-due notices tucked beneath a book on the counter, the taped-up window frame to keep out drafts, the empty fruit bowl. "One cleaned offices at night," Elena continued. "Usually I take Lily with me, and she sleeps on a little mat I bring. But tonight the building had a Christmas party, so I couldn't. I thought she'd stay put." She looked down at her hands. "I should have left more food." "Kids get hungry," Marcus said with a shrug. "Not your fault." Lily bounded back into the room wearing flannel pajamas with bears on them. "Are you staying for Christmas, motorcycle man?" Marcus smiled slightly. "No, kiddo. I've got to go soon." "But it's Christmas Eve," Lily protested. "Lily," Elena said gently. "Mr. Kane has his own plans." Marcus stood, moving toward the small radiator against the wall. He knelt down and examined it. This just needs the valve cleaned out. Probably got air in the line too. The super says he'll fix it after the holidays, Elena explained. Marcus ran his hand along the pipes. I could take a look at it tomorrow. You don't need to do that, Elena said quickly. Marcus straightened up. It wouldn't be any trouble. As he moved back toward the kitchen, his eyes caught sight of the open cabinet above the sink, just a single box of pasta and a jar of sauce inside. The refrigerator hummed loudly, clearly struggling to keep running. We're managing just fine, Elena said, noticing the direction of his gaze. She straightened her shoulders with quiet dignity. Things will pick up after the holidays. Marcus nodded, understanding her pride. He'd felt it himself too many times. That need to show the world you could handle whatever it threw at you, even when you were barely hanging on. I should get going, he said, moving toward the door. Thank you again, Elena said, following him. For bringing her home safe. Marcus paused at the doorway. Guess I owed you one, he said with a half smile. For the soup and the blanket. The neon sign of the Devil's Few clubhouse glowed red through the falling snow as Marcus pulled his Harley into the lot. Christmas Eve meant nothing here except an excuse for harder drinking. He parked beside a row of motorcycles, each dusted with fresh powder, and took a deep breath before heading inside. The heavy metal door swung open to a wall of noise. Silent Night blasted from speakers at an unholy volume while 24 leather-clad men filled the converted warehouse. Cigarette smoke hung thick in the air, mixing with the smell of whiskey and motor oil. Kane! Shouted Duke, the club's vice president, raising a bottle of Jack Daniels. Where the hell you been, brother? Thought you got lost in all that Christmas cheer out there. The men around him laughed. Marcus forced a smile and nodded, making his way to the bar. Skull, their aptly named bartender with a shaved head, slid a shot of whiskey across the counter without being asked. Merry fucking Christmas, Skull said with a crooked grin. Looks like you've seen a ghost. Marcus downed the shot in one gulp, feeling the burn in his throat. Just freezing my ass off out there. Around him, the clubhouse pulsed with the strange energy that always filled it on holidays. A forced rowdiness, like everyone was trying too hard to prove they didn't care about missing out on normal celebrations. Hammer and Viper wrestled in the corner, knocking over a stack of empty beer cans. Chains, the club treasurer, counted cash from their latest business transaction at a back table. Kane, Duke called again, waving him over to the worn leather couches where several members sprawled. Come tell these losers about that time we ran into those cops outside Dayton on Christmas morning. Marcus walked over, his body on autopilot, while his mind kept seeing flashes of Lily's tiny hands digging through garbage, her matter-of-fact explanation of looking for cookies. Earth to Kane! Duke snapped his fingers in front of Marcus's face. What's with you tonight? You look like someone stole your bike. Nothing, Marcus said, dropping onto the couch. Just tired. Well, wake the hell up, Duke laughed, handing him another drink. It's Christmas Eve. Time to celebrate our way. On the wall behind Duke hung the club's patch, a grinning devil with horns, the same emblem sewn onto the back of Marcus's vest. For 5 years, it had been his identity, his protection, his family. Tonight, for some reason, it felt heavier than usual. Raven, the newest prospect trying to earn his way into full membership, turned up the music even louder. This is how you celebrate Christmas, he shouted, smashing a beer bottle against the wall. The others cheered, but Marcus found himself drifting further away mentally. In his mind, he kept seeing Elena's face when she recognized him, the shock, the memory of kindness exchanged years ago in a homeless shelter. He remembered how careful Lily had been with her food, saving pieces for later like someone who knew hunger too well. What's with him? He heard someone mutter. Duke slapped his shoulder. Kane's just planning what trouble we're getting into tomorrow. Right, brother? Marcus nodded, raising his glass. Right. As the night wore on, the party grew more chaotic. Someone brought out poker chips, and the betting grew serious. A fight broke out between two members arguing over a debt. Through it all, Marcus sat in the corner, drinking less than he pretended to, watching the celebration that suddenly felt hollow. Around 2 in the morning, several members passed out on couches and floors. Others left with women they'd invited back. The music finally quieted, leaving just the sound of snoring and occasional mumbled conversations. Marcus moved to a darkened corner, away from the others still awake. He pulled out his wallet and counted the cash inside, just over $300. Not much, but enough. In his mind, he could still see the empty cabinets in Elena's kitchen, the broken heater, Lily's thin sweater. He made his decision quietly, without fanfare. Tomorrow, while everyone else nursed hangovers, he would help them. Not because he owed Elena for that night years ago, though maybe he did, but because something about seeing Lily digging through trash on Christmas Eve had cracked open a part of himself he thought was long dead. The old wall clock ticked loudly in Marcus's apartment above Joe's repair garage. 5:30 in the morning, Christmas Day. Outside his frost-covered window, darkness still gripped the town, but a streetlight revealed fat snowflakes drifting down to join the blanket of white covering everything. Marcus lay awake on his mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. He hadn't slept much. The image of Lily digging through trash kept appearing whenever he closed his eyes. After leaving the clubhouse at 3, he'd come straight home, his mind too busy for sleep. He sat up and rubbed his face, feeling the stubble on his cheeks. His apartment was barely more than a room. A mattress on the floor, a small table with one chair, a mini-fridge, and a hot plate. The bathroom down the hall was shared with 2 other tenants. But it was his, and it was private. No one from the club came here. The cold floor bit at his bare feet as he walked to the window. Christmas morning. The town would be quiet for hours still, families sleeping in before gathering around trees and presents. Marcus had no tree, no decorations, nothing that acknowledged the holiday. He leaned his forehead against the cold glass and closed his eyes. The memory came back clearly now, something he'd tried for years to forget. He had been 17, on the streets for 3 years already. That particular night had been brutally cold, the kind of winter night that killed homeless people who couldn't find shelter. His shoes had been falling apart, his thin jacket useless against the wind. The community shelter had been his last hope. He remembered how Elena had looked then, younger, her smile warmer, not yet worn down by life's hardships. She'd seen him standing in the doorway, shivering, looking dangerous and unwelcoming with his angry eyes and defensive posture. "Come in before you freeze," she'd said simply, no judgment in her voice. He'd eaten soup that burned his tongue because he couldn't wait for it to cool. She had given him thick socks when she noticed his wet feet, found him a blanket that smelled clean, and pointed him to an empty cot in the corner. "You're safe here tonight," she had told him. Just that. Simple words, but they had meant everything on that night when he'd been sure he might die from the cold. He had left before dawn, taking the socks and leaving the blanket folded neatly on the cot. He never returned, too proud, too afraid of needing help. Now, years later, the memory burned with painful clarity. Marcus turned from the window and grabbed his jeans from the floor. He dressed quickly, pulling on a thermal shirt before his usual black t-shirt and leather jacket. From under his mattress, he took the cash he kept separate from his wallet. Emergency money, almost $1,000 saved over months. Today, it had a purpose. The town was still asleep as Marcus rode his Harley slowly through empty streets. The 24-hour superstore on the edge of town was one of the few places open on Christmas morning. Its massive parking lot stood nearly empty, except for a few cars belonging to overnight workers. Bright fluorescent lights hurt his eyes as he grabbed a cart and began moving through the aisles. He felt awkward, out of place. A tattooed biker shopping on Christmas morning. An elderly security guard watched him suspiciously as he filled his cart with groceries. Canned soup, pasta, rice, cereal, peanut butter, bread. He added fresh fruit, milk, eggs, cheese, things he guessed Lily might like. In the health aisle, he grabbed children's vitamins, remembering how thin she had looked. He added soap, shampoo, toothpaste. In the clothing section, he hesitated before selecting a warm pink coat that looked like it might fit Lily, along with gloves and a hat. For Elena, he chose a practical winter jacket. Nothing fancy, but warm. The toy aisle stopped him completely. He stood, overwhelmed by colors and options. What did 5-year-old girls like? Eventually, he selected a soft teddy bear, a box of colored pencils with a drawing pad, and a children's book about animals. Last, he grabbed 2 thick blankets and a small space heater. At the checkout, the cashier, a tired woman with gray hair, raised her eyebrows at his purchases. "Got kids waiting at home?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "Just helping someone out." Something in his tone must have touched her, because her face softened. "That's what Christmas is about," she said quietly, scanning the items more carefully now. The total came to $386.27. Marcus counted out the cash without hesitation. Outside, the sky had lightened to a pale gray. Marcus carefully arranged everything into his motorcycle's saddlebags and the backpack he'd brought. The toy bear's head poked out slightly, and he gently pushed it deeper into the bag. He secured everything tightly, then sat on his bike for a moment, checking the address in his mind. He knew where their apartment building was. His plan was simple: leave everything by their door and be gone before they woke. No need for thanks. No need for Elena to feel obligated. Just a small repayment for a kindness given years ago on another cold winter night. Marcus parked his Harley 3 blocks away from Elena's apartment building. No sense in letting the rumble of his motorcycle announce his arrival. The morning had brightened into a clear Christmas day, sunlight sparkling across the fresh snow. Few people were out yet, just a man walking a dog, and an elderly couple holding hands as they carefully navigated the slippery sidewalk. He slung the heavy backpack over his shoulder and carried 2 large paper bags in his arms. The weight felt good, purposeful. He moved quickly, head down, focusing on not slipping on patches of ice hidden beneath the snow. His breath formed clouds in the cold air. The apartment building looked even shabbier in daylight. Paint peeled from the front door, and one of the hallway windows had a crack sealed with duct tape. Inside, the narrow hallway smelled of old carpet and something cooking, probably someone's Christmas breakfast. Marcus climbed the stairs quietly, listening for any sounds of people stirring in the apartments he passed. It was nearly 10 o'clock, but the building remained mostly silent. He found Elena's door, number 24, and set his bags down carefully. He quickly arranged everything into a large cardboard box he'd brought. First the food items, organized neatly so nothing would crush the bread or fruit. Then, the winter coats, folded with the tags still attached. The space heater went in next, followed by the blankets. On top, he placed the teddy bear, art supplies, and book for Lily. Marcus hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside was half the cash he had left, about $300. Not enough to change their lives, but maybe enough to help with bills or medicine if they needed it. He slipped the envelope between the folds of one blanket, where Elena would find it later. He stood and took one last look at the box. It seemed both too much and not enough at the same time. What would Elena think? Would she be embarrassed? Angry? He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. It didn't matter. This wasn't about him. From down the hallway came the sound of a door opening. Marcus tensed, then quickly moved toward the stairwell. He didn't want to be seen. didn't want Elena to feel obligated to thank him. This was just repaying a debt. Kindness returned for kindness given. He paused at the top of the stairs, looking back once at the box sitting in front of door number 24. Then, he descended quickly and silently, slipping out of the building and back into the bright Christmas morning. Inside apartment 24, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor near their small space heater, carefully coloring a Christmas tree on a piece of paper. Elena stood at their tiny kitchen counter, making hot chocolate from a packet. They'd exchanged their only gifts earlier, a second-hand doll Elena had found for Lily, and a handmade card Lily had created for her mother. "Can I open the curtains now, Mommy? I want to see the snow," Lily asked, not looking up from her drawing. "Sure, honey. Just for a little while," Elena replied. Their apartment faced north and got little direct sunlight, making it perpetually cold. They usually kept the curtains closed to trap what little heat they had. Lily jumped up and pulled back the thin curtain, pressing her face against the window. "It's so pretty. Everything is white." Elena smiled, stirring the hot chocolate. Despite everything, Lily could find joy in the simplest things. She had made sure to tell her daughter that sometimes Christmas gifts weren't about toys, but about being together. Lily had accepted this with the surprising wisdom of a child who had never known anything different. A noise in the hallway caught Lily's attention. "Someone's outside our door," she said, turning toward the sound. Elena froze. "What do you mean?" "I heard something." Lily was already moving toward the door. "Lily, wait!" Elena set down the mug and moved quickly across the room. But Lily had already turned the knob and pulled the door open. Lily gasped. "Mommy, look!" Elena reached the doorway and stared in disbelief at the large box filled with food, clothes, and other items. Her hand went to her mouth as she scanned the hallway, but there was no one there. "It's from Santa!" Lily exclaimed, bouncing up and down with excitement. "I told you he was real. I knew he wouldn't forget us." Elena knelt beside the box, touching the items inside with trembling fingers. The food alone would last them weeks. The winter coats were exactly their sizes. And the heater. Their apartment would finally be warm. "Can I have the teddy bear, Mommy? Please?" Lily was already reaching for the soft brown toy sitting on top of the pile. "Of course, sweetheart." Elena's voice caught in her throat as she helped Lily bring everything inside. As Lily hugged her new bear tightly, Elena stood by the window, looking out at the street below. She knew exactly who their Christmas angel was. The timing was too perfect, the gifts too thoughtful to be random charity. Marcus. A motorcycle turned the corner at the end of the street, then disappeared from view. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty air. That afternoon, Marcus drove his motorcycle past the diner 3 times before finally parking. He sat on his bike for several minutes, watching through the windows as customers came and went. Christmas Day had brought in a decent crowd. Families stopping for pie after church, elderly couples sharing quiet meals, and the occasional lone diner seeking warmth and company on the holiday. The bell above the door jingled as Marcus entered. The diner smelled of coffee, cinnamon, and fresh bread. Christmas music played softly from a radio behind the counter. A few heads turned his way. His leather jacket and tattoos always drew attention, but most people quickly returned to their conversations. Marcus slid onto a stool at the far end of the counter, away from the other customers. The same waitress from last night approached him, coffee pot in hand. Her name tag read, Betty. "Merry Christmas," she said, setting a mug in front of him and filling it without asking. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "Yeah, coffee's good here." He glanced around the diner, then leaned forward slightly. "Is the owner around?" Betty studied him for a moment, her expression curious but not unfriendly. "Frank? He's in the back office. Something wrong with your meal last night?" No, nothing like that, Marcus said quickly. Just wanted to talk to him about something. Betty nodded slowly. I'll let him know you're here. Who should I say is asking? Marcus. Give me a minute. She disappeared through the swinging kitchen doors. Marcus sipped his coffee, feeling awkward and out of place. The family in the booth nearest to him was laughing, their table crowded with plates of turkey dinner and slices of pie. A little boy about Lily's age was building a tower with sugar packets while his parents talked. The kitchen doors swung open again, and Betty emerged with a heavy-set man in his 50s. He wore a white apron over a plaid shirt, and his salt and pepper hair was thinning on top. He approached with a friendly but cautious expression. I'm Frank, he said, extending his hand. Betty says you wanted to talk to me? Marcus shook his hand. Could we talk somewhere private? Frank raised an eyebrow but nodded. Sure, follow me. He led Marcus to a small office off the kitchen. It was barely larger than a closet, with a desk covered in invoices and schedules. A small artificial Christmas tree sat in the corner, decorated with miniature silverware and tiny laminated menus. What can I help you with? Frank asked, leaning against the desk, while Marcus stood awkwardly by the door. I was here last night, Marcus began, with a little girl, 5 years old. Frank's expression changed to recognition. Right, Betty mentioned that. Said the kid looked half-starved. Marcus nodded. Her name's Lily. Her mom works nights cleaning offices. They don't have much. He paused, struggling to find the right words. I was wondering... I know restaurants throw out food at the end of the day. Good food that just can't be served the next day. Understanding dawned on Frank's face. And you're wondering if we could spare some of those leftovers? Yeah. Marcus looked down at his boots. I'd pay for it, of course. Frank studied him for a long moment. You know, most folks wouldn't expect a guy who looks like you to be playing Santa Claus. Marcus felt his face grow warm. It's not like that. He trailed off, unsure how to explain without revealing too much of Elena and Lily's personal situation. Hey, relax, Frank smiled. I'm not judging. Actually, I think it's pretty decent of you. He scratched his chin thoughtfully. Tell you what, we always have extras at closing time. Soup, bread, sometimes pies or meatloaf that won't keep till tomorrow. Usually goes in the trash. Seems like a waste. So you'd be willing to... Marcus left the question hanging. Frank nodded. Come by around 9 tonight after we close. Knock on the back door. I'll have Betty put together whatever's left. I can pay. No need. Frank waved off the offer. Like I said, it's just going to waste otherwise. Marcus extended his hand. Thanks, really. Frank shook it firmly. Merry Christmas, son. When Marcus returned to the counter, Betty brought him a slice of apple pie he hadn't ordered. On the house, she said with a small smile. Frank says your coffee's on the house, too. Marcus ate quickly, uncomfortable with the kindness, but grateful nonetheless. When he finished, he left a $20 bill under his coffee mug, despite Betty's protests. At 9 o'clock that night, Marcus returned to the diner's back entrance. The parking lot was empty, except for 2 cars, presumably Frank's and Betty's. He knocked lightly on the metal door. Betty opened it, holding a large paper bag that smelled delicious. Here you go, she said, handing it to Marcus. There's soup, half a meatloaf, some mashed potatoes, and 2 slices of apple pie. Oh, and bread rolls. Thank you, Marcus said, taking the bag. It was warm and heavier than he'd expected. Frank says come back tomorrow night too, Betty added. We always have extras after the dinner rush. Marcus nodded, surprised by the continued offer. I will. As he secured the bag to his motorcycle, Marcus felt something unfamiliar stirring inside him. People had been kind to him today. Frank, Betty, even the elderly couple who had smiled at him as they left the diner. No judgment, no fear. Just simple human kindness. He started his motorcycle and headed toward Elena and Lily's apartment, the bag of warm food secure in his saddlebag. The sky darkened early on the day after Christmas. A fierce winter wind whipped through the town, sending temperatures plummeting below freezing. Marcus rode his motorcycle through streets nearly empty of people, his hands stiff with cold despite thick gloves. He parked his bike in front of Elena's apartment building and sat for a moment, debating whether he should go up. The paper bag from the diner sat in his saddlebag, filled with tonight's leftovers, chicken soup, bread rolls, and apple cobbler. But he wondered if his presence would make Elena uncomfortable. After all, he was still a stranger to her in many ways. Finally, he grabbed the bag and headed up the concrete stairs to the third floor. The hallway was dimly lit, with flickering lights that cast shadows across peeling wallpaper. Marcus could hear a television playing behind one door, children arguing behind another. He stopped in front of apartment 3C and knocked lightly. The door opened a crack, and Elena's cautious face appeared. When she recognized Marcus, her expression softened slightly. "Marcus," she said, opening the door wider. "I didn't expect to see you again." "Just passing through," he lied, holding up the paper bag. "The diner had some extra food. Thought you and Lily might want it." Elena hesitated, then stepped back. "Come in." The apartment was painfully cold. Marcus could see his breath forming small clouds in the air. Elena wore a heavy sweater with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. In the corner of the small living room, Lily sat on the floor, surrounded by crayons and paper. She wore mittens and a winter hat indoors. "Motorcycle Santa!" Lily cried out when she saw him. She jumped up and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. Marcus froze, not used to such open affection. "Hey, kid," he said awkwardly, patting her head. Elena took the bag from him. "Thank you. You didn't have to bring this." "It's nothing," he mumbled, looking around the apartment. His eyes landed on an ancient radiator in the corner. It clicked and sputtered, but clearly provided no heat. "Your heater's not working." Elena sighed. "It hasn't worked right in weeks. The landlord keeps promising to fix it, but—" She shrugged, the gesture speaking volumes about empty promises and neglect. Marcus walked over to the radiator and knelt down, examining it closely. "Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with machines." "You don't have to," Elena started. "I want to," Marcus interrupted. "It's freezing in here." Elena nodded gratefully. "Thank you. I'll heat up some of this soup." Marcus turned his attention to the radiator. The ancient unit was caked with dust and rust, but the problem seemed to be more than just age. He could hear water moving through the pipes, but the radiator itself remained cold. "Do you have any tools?" he asked. "Just some basic things," Elena said, bringing him a small toolkit from under the sink. "Nothing special." Marcus examined the meager collection of tools. "I've got better ones on my bike. I'll be right back." He jogged down to his motorcycle and opened the tool compartment built into the side. Every biker worth his salt carried tools for emergency repairs. Marcus returned with a wrench, pliers, and a few other tools that might help. Lily watched him with wide eyes as he began working on the radiator. "Are you fixing it like you fix your motorcycle?" "Something like that," Marcus replied, carefully loosening a valve. "Different machine, same idea. Sometimes things just need a little help to work right again." Elena set out bowls of soup on their small table. "Dinner will be ready when you are." Marcus nodded, but remained focused on the heater. The valve was stuck tight from years of neglect. He applied more pressure with the wrench, careful not to break anything. Finally, it gave way with a squeak. Dirty water poured out into the bucket Elena had quickly provided. "Airlock," Marcus explained, though he wasn't sure Elena understood. "Water can't flow properly when there's air trapped in the system." After draining the dirty water, Marcus tightened the valve again and moved to the other end of the radiator. He worked methodically, cleaning what he could, adjusting valves, and finally bleeding the radiator to remove all the trapped air. Lily sat cross-legged beside him, handing him tools when he asked, and watching every move with fascination. "Are you a fixing superhero?" she asked seriously. Marcus couldn't help but smile. "No, just someone who knows how machines work." After nearly 45 minutes of work, Marcus felt the radiator beginning to warm under his hands. Slowly at first, then with growing strength, heat began to radiate into the room. "There," he said, wiping his hands on a rag Elena had provided. "Should work fine now." Lily placed her small hand on the radiator, her face lighting up with wonder. "It's warm!" she exclaimed. She looked at Marcus with pure admiration in her eyes. "You did fix it. You really are Motorcycle Santa." Elena touched the radiator too, relief washing over her face. "I can't believe it. We've been cold for weeks." She turned to Marcus, genuine gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "Don't need repayment," Marcus said, packing up his tools. "Just glad I could help." Warm air gradually filled the small apartment, chasing away the bitter cold that had been their constant companion. The warmth from the newly fixed radiator spread through the small apartment, bringing life back to the chilly rooms. Elena ladled hot soup into 3 bowls, while Marcus washed his hands in the kitchen sink, scrubbing away the grime from the old heater. "Dinner's ready," Elena called, placing the bowls on their small wooden table. Lily skipped to her chair, her cheeks already showing a hint of pink from the warming room. The mittens and winter hat she'd been wearing indoors were now discarded on the couch. "You have to sit with us, Motorcycle Santa," Lily insisted, pointing to the empty chair beside her. Marcus hesitated, glancing at Elena, who nodded with a small smile. "It's the least we can offer after you fixed our heat," she said quietly. The 3 of them sat around the table, steam rising from their bowls of chicken soup. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd shared a meal at someone's home. The bikers ate together at the clubhouse, but it was always loud and chaotic. Nothing like this simple, quiet dinner. "This is good," Marcus said, after taking his first spoonful. "It's even better when it's hot," Elena replied, watching her daughter eat hungrily. When they finished eating, Lily jumped up from her chair. "I want to show you something," she announced to Marcus, her eyes bright with excitement. "Wait here." She ran to a small desk in the corner of the living room and returned with a stack of papers clutched in her hands. Climbing back into her chair, she spread the papers out on the table in front of Marcus. "Look, I drew you," Lily said proudly. Marcus stared down at the colorful crayon drawings. Each page featured a stick figure on what was clearly meant to be a motorcycle. But what caught his attention were the large, colorful wings sprouting from the rider's back. Angel wings in bright blues, pinks, and yellows. "That's me?" Marcus asked, his voice unexpectedly rough. "Uh-huh," Lily nodded enthusiastically. "See? This is your motorcycle." She pointed to the black scribble with wheels. "And these are your angel wings, because you're Motorcycle Santa." Marcus picked up one of the drawings, studying it closely. The stick figure had a serious face, just 2 dots for eyes, and a straight line for a mouth. Above the figure's head was a round, yellow circle. "What's this?" he asked, pointing to the yellow circle. "That's your halo," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "All angels have halos." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. No one had ever drawn him before, and certainly no one had ever imagined him with angel wings and a halo. He, who wore the patches of a motorcycle club that struck fear in most people who saw them. "I made lots of them," Lily continued, pushing more drawings toward him. "This one is you, bringing us food. And this one is you fixing our heater." Each drawing showed the same motorcycle-riding angel performing different acts of kindness. Marcus started, but words failed him. "Do you like them?" Lily asked, suddenly looking uncertain. Marcus cleared his throat. "Yeah, kid, I like them a lot." "You can have this one," Lily said, selecting her favorite drawing and pushing it toward him. So you remember. Marcus took the drawing carefully, as if it were made of glass instead of cheap printer paper. Thanks, he said, his voice gruff. He let out a short, awkward laugh, unsure how to handle the warm feeling spreading through his chest. It was uncomfortable, unfamiliar, yet somehow right. Not sure about the angel part, he said, trying to make light of it. I'm more of well, not an angel. Yes, you are, Lily insisted firmly. You brought us food when we were hungry and fixed our heater when we were cold. That's what angels do. From across the table, Elena watched silently. Her eyes moved from her daughter's animated face to Marcus's uncomfortable yet touched expression. Something was happening that she hadn't expected, a connection forming between this rough-looking biker and her gentle daughter. Angels help people, Lily continued, completely convinced of her assessment. And they make things better, like you do. Marcus folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his leather jacket's inner pocket, right over his heart. He wasn't sure what to say. No one in his life had ever seen him as anything good or pure. Certainly not as someone who made things better. Elena reached over and gently squeezed her daughter's shoulder. It's getting late, sweetie. Time to get ready for bed. But her eyes remained on Marcus, watching as the tough biker struggled with emotions he clearly wasn't used to feeling. She saw beyond his tattoos and leather to the young man who had once been cold and alone. The same young man who now couldn't quite handle being seen as someone's hero. The neon beer signs cast a red glow across the biker clubhouse. Cigarette smoke hung in thick clouds near the ceiling, while the smell of whiskey and motor oil filled the air. Marcus pushed open the heavy door, stepping from the cold night into the warm, noisy room. Rock music blasted from speakers in the corner. 3 bikers played pool while others gathered around a poker table littered with cash and beer bottles. The clubhouse felt like home once. Now, it just felt loud. Well, look who finally showed up, called a thick-set biker named Razor. He raised his beer in Marcus's direction. Thought maybe you crashed your bike in a ditch somewhere. Not yet, Marcus answered, shrugging off his leather jacket. The folded drawing from Lily still rested in his inside pocket. He kept it there, though he wasn't sure why. Marcus headed straight to the refrigerator, grabbing a cold beer. He popped the cap and took a long drink, feeling eyes on him from across the room. Duke Harrington sat at the poker table, cards in one hand, whiskey in the other. His eyes narrowed as he watched Marcus. Kane, Duke called out. Get over here. You're missing all the action. Marcus walked over, nodding to the other players. He pulled up a chair but didn't join the game. Not playing tonight, he said, taking another sip of his beer. Duke laid down his cards. Full house, gentlemen. He grinned as he raked in the pile of cash from the center of the table. The other bikers groaned and tossed their cards. So, Duke said, focusing his full attention on Marcus now. Where you been hiding the last couple days? Missed the Christmas bash? Missed the run to Riverdale? The other bikers quieted, sensing tension. Duke Harrington wasn't just asking a casual question. In their world, being absent without explanation raised suspicions. Had some things to take care of, Marcus answered, keeping his voice neutral. Things, Duke repeated. What kind of things keep a brother away during club business? Marcus felt the weight of everyone's stares. Just stuff around my apartment. Bike needed work too. The lie felt stiff on his tongue. Duke shuffled the deck of cards slowly, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. Funny thing, he said. Saw your bike outside Hank's Hardware yesterday morning. Looked fine to me. A prickle of unease ran down Marcus's spine. Duke had been watching him. Picking up parts, Marcus said. Carburetor's been acting up. That right? Duke leaned forward. 'Cause I also heard someone matching your description's been hanging around the east side. That rundown apartment complex on Maple Street. The room went quiet, except for the music still playing in the background. Everyone was listening now. The east side was poor, Not a place the bikers typically went unless it was for business. And business usually meant collections, intimidation, or worse. "You working some side action we don't know about?" Duke asked, his voice harder now. "Club gets a cut of all business. You know that." "No business," Marcus said firmly. "Just helping someone out." Duke's eyebrows shot up. "Helping someone? Since when do you play charity worker?" Laughter rippled through the room. Marcus kept his face blank, though anger flickered inside him. He took another drink of his beer, instead of answering. "Who you helping, Kane?" Duke pressed. "Must be someone real special to pull you away from your brothers at Christmas." Marcus debated how much to say. Just a kid and her mom having a rough time. Fix their heater. No big deal. Duke's eyes narrowed. "A kid and her mom? You turning soft on us?" More laughter, but Duke wasn't smiling. "Where exactly on the east side?" "Why do you care?" Marcus asked, feeling protective suddenly. "Because I care about this club," Duke snapped, slamming his glass down. "And I care when one of our brothers starts acting strange, disappearing, hanging around places we got no business being." Duke stood up, walked around the table, and put a heavy hand on Marcus's shoulder. His fingers dug in painfully. "You know we had trouble with some folks in those apartments a few years back. Woman testified against Cracker. Got him 5 years. Marcus's muscles tensed. "Elena. It had to be her." "Don't know anything about that," Marcus said, though his heart was pounding. "Just helping someone who needed it." Duke leaned down, his mouth close to Marcus's ear. "You better be careful who you're getting friendly with, brother. Helping strangers who might have connections to our past legal troubles. That could bring problems for all of us." He squeezed Marcus's shoulder harder. "We don't like problems, Kane. And we take care of them when they show up. Remember that." Duke straightened up and returned to his seat, leaving the threat hanging in the air. The other bikers watched Marcus carefully, waiting to see his reaction. Marcus raised his beer bottle in a mock toast. "Message received," he said, keeping his voice steady. But inside, alarm bells were ringing. Duke was dangerous, and now he was suspicious. The afternoon sun struggled through heavy clouds, casting weak light across the diner's worn linoleum floor. Marcus pushed open the door, bringing with him a gust of cold air and the jingle of bells. The lunch crowd had thinned, leaving only a few regulars hunched over coffee cups at the counter. Flo, the waitress, who'd served Lily her pancakes, looked up from wiping down a table. Her eyebrows rose at the sight of Marcus without his leather jacket. He wore just a plain black sweater today. "Well, look who's back," she said, tucking a gray-streaked strand of hair behind her ear. "How's that little one doing?" "Better," Marcus said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "Thanks for asking." The diner owner, Cal Thompson, emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish rag. In his 60s, with salt and pepper hair and forearms thick from decades of cooking, Cal had run the place for 30 years. His eyes crinkled with recognition. "You're the biker who brought in that hungry kid on Christmas Eve," he said, extending his hand across the counter. "Cal Thompson." "Marcus." They shook hands briefly. "Coffee?" Cal asked, already reaching for a mug. Marcus nodded. "And maybe a minute of your time, if you've got it." Cal studied him, then gestured toward a booth in the corner. "Let's sit where it's quieter." Marcus followed him to the booth, settling onto the cracked vinyl seat. Steam rose from the fresh coffee Cal had brought along. The owner settled his large frame opposite Marcus. "So, what's on your mind?" Cal asked. Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "That little girl I brought in. She's not the only one struggling in that building." Cal nodded slowly. "That old complex on Maple?" "Yeah, lot of folks living on the edge over there." "I was thinking," Marcus said, his voice lowering, "about doing something for a few of the families. Nothing big. Just a hot meal, maybe some basics." He paused, feeling awkward. He'd never done anything like this before. You mentioned having extra food sometimes. I thought maybe. Cal leaned back, studying Marcus with curious eyes. Interesting request coming from someone wearing those colors the other night. Marcus felt his shoulders tense. I'm just Marcus today. That's all. Cal's weathered face softened. Wasn't judging, son. Just surprised. He took a sip of his own coffee. How many families are we talking about? Maybe 5 or 6 apartments? Single parents mostly. Kids. The diner owner rubbed his chin thoughtfully. End of day, we always have leftovers. Usually just gets tossed. Chicken, mashed potatoes today, meatloaf tomorrow. Hope flickered in Marcus's chest. That would be perfect. I might be able to throw in some bread too, Cal continued, warming to the idea. My wife makes it fresh each morning. Always extra. Marcus nodded, relief washing through him. I could pick it up, deliver it over there. Tell you what, Cal said, leaning forward. I've got a nephew who delivers for me sometimes. Has a van. Better than trying to balance hot food on that motorcycle of yours. You'd help with that too? Marcus asked, surprised. Cal shrugged. My folks were dirt poor when I was coming up. Ate more than a few charity meals myself. He glanced around his diner with pride. Look at me now. Sometimes people just need a hand up. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a weight lifting. He wasn't alone in wanting to help. When were you thinking? Cal asked. Tonight, Marcus suggested. I know it's sudden, but tonight works, Cal interrupted. Kitchen closes at 8. I can have everything packed by 8:30. He tapped his fingers on the table. My nephew Joey can meet you here with the van. I can pay for the gas, Marcus offered quickly. Cal waved him off. Don't worry about that. But if you want to help more, my wife's been collecting warm clothes all winter for donation. Coats, gloves, that sort of thing. They're boxed up in our storeroom. Could throw those in too. Marcus nodded, something warm spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. I'll be here at 8:30, he said. Cal stood, extending his hand again. You're full of surprises, Marcus. Not what I expected when you walked in wearing that vest the other night. Marcus shook his hand firmly. Yeah, he said quietly. Not what I expected either. The old apartment building's hallway had never looked so alive. Warm yellow light spilled from the overhead fixtures, casting a gentle glow on the faded wallpaper and worn carpet. Where usually there was only silence or muffled sounds behind closed doors, tonight the hallway hummed with voices and laughter. Marcus stood beside a folding table they had set up near the stairwell, his hands busy filling plates with steaming food. He'd swapped his usual leather for a simple dark sweater, but some of the residents still eyed him warily. The tough biker look wasn't easy to shake. Cal worked beside him, dishing out thick slices of meatloaf and generous spoonfuls of mashed potatoes. His nephew Joey had helped carry everything up, and now handed out warm bread rolls wrapped in napkins. More gravy? Cal asked a tired-looking woman with 2 small children clutching her legs. Yes, please, she said softly, gratitude shining in her eyes. I haven't had a hot meal I didn't cook myself in months. Marcus watched as the food disappeared from the serving trays. People emerged cautiously from their apartments, drawn by the unexpected commotion and the smell of home cooking. Some came with stories written in the lines of their faces. Exhaustion, struggle, worry. But tonight, there was something else too. Relief. Maybe even joy. Lily darted between the adults, her small face flushed with excitement. She proudly introduced Marcus to everyone as, my friend who fixed our heater. The title made something tighten in his chest each time she said it. An elderly man with a cane approached slowly, eyeing the table with disbelief. Is this really for anyone? He asked, his voice wavering. Yes, sir, Marcus answered, filling a plate high. Please, take as much as you need. The man's weathered hands trembled slightly as he accepted the food. Been a long time since Christmas meant anything good in this building. From the corner of his eye, Marcus spotted Elena moving through the crowd. She carried a stack of paper plates to a young mother juggling a baby on her hip. Elena looked different tonight, still tired, but her eyes sparkled. She moved with purpose, helping organize the impromptu gathering, making sure everyone had what they needed. Two teenage boys who had initially hung back, trying to look uninterested, finally approached the table. "You're that biker guy from down by the river, aren't you?" one asked Marcus, recognition in his eyes. Marcus tensed slightly. "Just helping out tonight." The boy shrugged. "My uncle says you guys aren't all bad." He grabbed a plate. "This smells awesome." As the evening progressed, Joey brought up boxes of warm clothes from the van: coats, scarves, gloves, and thick socks. Children tried on winter boots with delight, while parents gratefully accepted warm jackets. Marcus watched it all unfold, standing slightly apart. This wasn't his world, yet somehow it felt right being here. He noticed how neighbors who probably rarely spoke were now chatting, sharing stories, helping each other carry plates back to apartments where elderly relatives couldn't come out. Elena approached him as the crowd began to thin, carrying 2 cups of coffee from a pot someone had brewed. "Here," she said, offering him one. "You haven't taken a break all evening." Marcus accepted it with a nod. "Thanks." They stood side by side, watching Cal pack up the remaining food into containers for people to take home. "You did this," Elena said quietly. "All of it." Marcus shook his head. "Cal did most of the work, and his nephew. But it was your idea." Elena turned to face him fully, her eyes meeting his. "You saw a need and didn't walk away." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "It's nothing. It's everything to the people here," she corrected gently. "You know, what you're doing now reminds me of that night at the shelter." "How so?" "Small kindnesses change lives, Marcus," Elena said. "That night at the shelter, I just gave you soup and a blanket. It was such a small thing to me. But it mattered to you, didn't it?" Marcus swallowed hard, remembering the bitter cold, how hungry he'd been, how that single act of kindness had kept him going. "Yeah," he admitted. "It did. And now look." She gestured to the hallway where people were helping each other, talking and smiling. "Your small kindness tonight is changing things too. You might not see it all, but trust me, it matters." For once in his life, Marcus didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, feeling both uncomfortable with the praise and strangely at peace. The night had settled into a peaceful quiet as Marcus stepped out of Elena's apartment building. The snow had stopped falling hours ago, leaving the world covered in a crisp white blanket that reflected the moonlight. His breath clouded in front of him as he zipped up his jacket against the cold. Inside, he still felt warm from the evening's events, not just from the food and activity, but from something deeper. Marcus paused to light a cigarette, cupping his hand around the flame to protect it from the gentle wind. The streetlight above him flickered, casting shifting shadows across the sidewalk. He took a long drag and looked back at the building. Through a second-floor window, he could see Lily waving goodbye. He raised his hand in a small wave back. What he didn't see was the dark figure watching from half a block away. Duke Harrington sat in his idling pickup truck, engine running just enough to keep the heater going. His eyes narrowed as he watched Marcus standing there, looking up at the apartment like some love-struck teenager. Duke had followed him from the diner, curious about where Marcus had been disappearing to these past few days. The club noticed things like that, when a brother started acting different. Duke pulled out his phone and snapped a quick picture of the building address. Then, he slumped lower in his seat as Marcus walked to his motorcycle parked at the curb. As Marcus rode away, Duke put his truck in gear and followed at a distance, headlights off until he reached the main road. His mind worked through what he'd just seen. That address seemed familiar somehow. He was sure he'd heard it mentioned before, maybe in club business. Duke followed Marcus for several blocks before turning off toward his own place. He needed to check something before confronting him. In his small, cluttered apartment, Duke dug through a box of old club paperwork, things the president had asked him to keep track of over the years, records of people who'd crossed them, witnesses who'd testified, debts owed. His thick fingers flipped through the files until he found what he was looking for. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, staring at the page. The woman's name jumped out at him. Elena Rivera. The address matched exactly. She was the cleaning woman who'd testified 3 years ago against Razor Mike, putting him away for assault. The club had never forgotten. They had a long memory for those who betrayed them. Duke's face hardened as he slammed the file shut. Marcus wasn't just helping some random family. He was helping a witness who'd damaged the club's reputation and cost them a member. That was betrayal. The next evening, the clubhouse parking lot was nearly empty when Marcus pulled in. Most members were home with family or drinking at the bar downtown. He'd only stopped by to pick up some tools he'd left behind, planning to fix Elena's leaky faucet in the morning. He was halfway to the door when Duke's truck roared into the lot, gravel crunching under the tires as it came to an abrupt stop. Duke climbed out, slamming the door behind him. "Kane," Duke called out, his voice cutting through the quiet night. "Been looking for you." Marcus turned, instantly alert at Duke's tone. "What's up?" Duke stalked toward him, boots heavy on the pavement. In the harsh glow of the security light, his face looked twisted with anger. "What's up?" Duke repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "What's up is I saw you last night. At that apartment building on Willow Street." Marcus kept his face neutral. "So?" "So." Duke was close enough now that Marcus could smell the whiskey on his breath. "So I know exactly who lives there. Elena Rivera, the cleaning woman who testified against Razor Mike." A cold feeling washed over Marcus, but he didn't let it show. "I don't know what you're talking about." Duke's laugh was harsh. "Don't play dumb with me. I checked the records. She put Mike away for 3 years with her testimony. And now here you are, playing Santa Claus to the bitch who stabbed your brother in the back." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Watch your mouth." "Or what?" Duke stepped closer, his finger jabbing into Marcus's chest. "You gonna defend her now? Choose her over your family? Over the club that took you in when nobody else would?" They stood face to face in the dim light, tension crackling between them. "You're helping the enemy, Kane," Duke spat. "That makes you a traitor to everything we stand for, everything we built." Marcus said nothing, which only seemed to infuriate Duke more. "What happened to you, man?" Duke demanded, genuine confusion mixing with his anger. "You used to understand loyalty. Now you're sneaking around helping witnesses like some kind of choir boy." "It's not what you think," Marcus finally said, his voice low. "Then explain it to me," Duke challenged. "Explain how you're not betraying this club right now." The clubhouse security light cast harsh shadows across Duke's face as he stood toe-to-toe with Marcus, their breath fogged in the cold night air between them. For a long moment, neither man spoke, the silence broken only by the distant sound of a car passing on the main road. "There's nothing to explain," Marcus finally said, his voice steady, despite the anger building inside him. "It's not club business." Duke's laugh was cold and sharp. "Not club business? Everything we do is club business. That's what being a brother means." He tapped the patch on Marcus's jacket. "Or did you forget what this stands for?" Marcus took a step back, trying to create some space between them. The snow crunched under his boots. "I didn't forget anything. This is different." "Different how?" Duke pressed, following Marcus's retreat, step for step. "You're helping a witness who put one of our own behind bars. That's a direct violation of everything we stand for." "I'm helping a little girl who was digging through trash on Christmas Eve," Marcus shot back, his voice rising. A hungry kid who hasn't done anything wrong. Duke's eyes narrowed. So it's about the kid. What are you now? Some kind of guardian angel? His tone dripped with mockery. You think playing hero to some brat makes what you're doing okay? Marcus felt heat rising to his face. You didn't see her, Duke? Standing there in the snow, looking for food and garbage. So what? Duke threw his hands up. There are plenty of hungry kids out there. Why this one? Why the daughter of someone who testified against us? Marcus hesitated. He couldn't explain that Elena had once helped him years ago, that he owed her a debt Duke could never understand. That would only make things worse. I didn't know who she was when I helped her, Marcus said, which wasn't a complete lie. By the time I found out, it didn't matter anymore. Duke stepped closer again, his face twisted with disgust. Didn't matter. Of course it matters. Loyalty matters. Reputation matters. He jabbed a finger into Marcus's chest. What do you think happens if people see one of us getting cozy with witnesses? They'll think we've gone soft. They'll stop respecting us, stop fearing us. Marcus knocked Duke's hand away. I don't care about any of that right now. That's exactly the problem, Duke growled. You used to understand how this works. We protect our own. We punish our enemies. That woman is an enemy. The wind picked up, swirling snow around their feet. Marcus stood his ground, realizing there was no way to make Duke understand. The 1000th, not stopping, Marcus said quietly. The kid needs help. The mother works hard. They're just trying to survive. Duke's expression darkened. He stepped back, looking Marcus up and down as if seeing him for the first time. You know what? I actually believe you. You really have gone soft. He shook his head slowly. But this isn't just about you anymore. The change in Duke's tone sent a chill through Marcus that had nothing to do with the winter air. What's that supposed to mean? Marcus asked. Duke spread his hands. It means the club has a reputation to maintain. We can't have people thinking they can testify against us, then get protection from one of our own. His voice lowered. We can't let that stand, Marcus. Are you threatening me? Marcus stepped forward, hands balling into fists. Duke smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not you. I'm just explaining how things work. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. If you keep helping that woman and her kid, someone's going to have to pay a visit. Make an example. Show the community what happens when you cross us. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Duke, your choice, brother. Duke cut him off. Walk away from them now, and we forget all about it. Keep playing hero. He let the sentence hang unfinished. The threat lingered between them, clear as the icy air. You stay away from them, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. Duke shrugged, already turning toward his truck. That's up to you. You know how to make this go away. He opened his door, then looked back over his shoulder. Choose your family, Marcus, before someone else pays for your mistake. The roar of Marcus's motorcycle engine echoed through empty streets as he rode away from the clubhouse, snow dancing in his headlight beam. His heart hammered against his ribs, each beat echoing Duke's threat in his mind. The cold air stung his face, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was Lily's innocent smile, and Elena's tired eyes, and the danger he had brought to their doorstep. He took a sharp turn down a side street, needing to be alone with his thoughts. Duke's words played over and over in his head. Someone's going to have to pay a visit. Make an example. Marcus knew it wasn't an empty threat. He'd seen what happened to people who crossed the club. The memory of a man lying broken on the pavement flashed in his mind, a shopkeeper who'd refused to pay for protection. The club had made sure everyone in town heard about what happened to him. And now, Elena and Lily faced the same threat. Because of him. Damn it, Marcus muttered, slowing his bike as he reached the town park. He pulled over and cut the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy around him. Snowflakes drifted silently onto his shoulders and melted against the warmth of his leather jacket. He sat there, staring at nothing. How had things gotten so complicated? A week ago, his life had been simple. Ride with the club, fix bikes, keep his head down. Then he'd seen a little girl digging through trash on Christmas Eve, and everything had changed. Marcus rubbed his hands over his face. He couldn't shake the image of Duke's cold smile. The man enjoyed causing pain. If Duke decided to make an example of Elena and Lily. "I can't let that happen," Marcus said to the empty park. He kicked at the snow beneath his boot. Maybe he could stand up to Duke, challenge him directly. But what would that accomplish? Even if he won that fight, the rest of the club would back Duke's play. They always did when it came to club loyalty. And Elena had testified against one of their own years ago. Marcus started his bike again and rode slowly through the darkened town. Christmas decorations still glowed in windows and on porches, their cheerful colors a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. He passed the diner, now closed for the night. The place where he'd first really talked to Lily, where she'd carefully saved food and napkins for later. As he approached Elena's apartment building, he slowed to a crawl. A single light burned in their window. Were they awake? Was Lily having trouble sleeping? Was Elena worrying about bills or working another night shift cleaning offices? He wanted to go up there, to warn them about Duke. But what would he say? That they were in danger because he'd tried to help them? That his past was catching up to them? Marcus parked his bike a block away and walked toward their building, staying in the shadows. He stood there for a long time, looking up at their window, snow collecting on his shoulders. In that moment, he realized there was only one solution. He had to disappear from their lives. As long as Duke and the others saw him around Elena and Lily, they would be targets. The only way to keep them safe was to cut all ties, immediately and completely. The thought of walking away left a hollow feeling in his chest. Lily's drawings of him as motorcycle Santa, with angel wings. Elena's quiet strength and gratitude. The way they had begun to feel like something he'd never had before. But his feelings didn't matter. Their safety did. Marcus turned away from the building, each step feeling heavier than the last. He would stay away. No more visits, no more help with the heater, no more food deliveries. He would make sure Duke knew he the 500th made his choice, even if it was tearing him apart inside. Back at his motorcycle, Marcus took one last look toward their window before pulling on his helmet. The light had gone out. He hoped they were sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger or of his decision. "I'm sorry," he whispered, knowing they couldn't hear him. "It's the only way." The motorcycle engine rumbled to life, and Marcus rode away into the night, leaving only tire tracks in the snow that would be covered by morning. The morning sun glinted off freshly fallen snow as Marcus walked into Joe's garage on the edge of town. His motorcycle rumbled one last time before he cut the engine and sat quietly for a moment, his hand resting on the familiar handlebars. This bike had been his freedom, his pride, his escape for years. Now it represented something else, a danger to the only people who had shown him real kindness in years. Joe wiped his greasy hands on a rag as Marcus approached. The older mechanic had known Marcus since he was a teenage runaway, with motor oil permanently embedded in his fingernails. "That's a surprise," Joe said, eyeing the Harley. "Thought you'd die before selling that machine." Marcus shrugged, trying to seem casual. "Need the cash. Got plans." Joe narrowed his eyes. At 65, he'd seen enough troubled young men to recognize when one was in deep water. "This got anything to do with Duke?" "Word travels fast in small towns, son." Marcus stiffened. "You offering to buy it or not?" Joe sighed, walking around the bike slowly. "She's in good shape. I've got a buyer in Ridgefield been looking for something like this." He named a price that was fair. Not generous, but fair. "Deal," Marcus said quickly. As Joe counted out the cash, he studied Marcus carefully. "You know, There's a delivery job opening at the parts warehouse 2 towns over. Owner owes me a favor. Marcus pocketed the money without responding. He handed over the keys and walked toward the door. Marcus, Joe called after him, whatever trouble you're in, running ain't always the answer. Marcus paused at the doorway. Sometimes it's the only way to keep others safe. Back at his small apartment above the repair garage, Marcus packed quickly. He didn't have much. Some clothes, tools, a few books. The things that mattered to him could fit in a single duffel bag. He'd lived his whole life ready to leave at a moment's notice. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Heater's working great. Lily asked if you might come by later. She has a new drawing for you. Marcus stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the reply button. The thought of Lily waiting for him, drawing her pictures of motorcycles and angels, made his chest ache. But responding would only make things harder. He deleted the message. Next, he changed into plain clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, without any club insignia. The leather vest, with the club's patches, lay on his bed. For years, it had been his identity, his protection. Now it represented everything he needed to leave behind. Marcus knew he couldn't simply walk away from the club. There would be consequences. But he also knew Duke wouldn't follow him out of town. Not for someone as low-ranking as him. Duke's threats had been about making a point, about club loyalty. If Marcus disappeared, Duke would likely let it go, considering it a victory. As long as Marcus stayed far away from Elena and Lily. He picked up his duffel bag and took one last look around the small room that had been his home. On impulse, he grabbed a piece of paper from his nightstand and scribbled a brief note. Elena, stay away from the club. They know about your past. Keep Lily safe. I'm sorry. M. He'd slip it under her door on his way out of town. A warning without a goodbye. It was all he could offer. The bus station was nearly empty when Marcus arrived. He purchased a ticket for the farthest destination available, a city 3 states away. It would be a fresh start. No one would know him there. No one would connect him to Elena or Lily. As he waited for his bus, Marcus caught his reflection in the station window. Without his motorcycle, without his leather vest, he looked like a different person. Maybe that's what he needed to become. The last thing he did before leaving town was walk past Elena's apartment building. He approached cautiously, checking for any signs of Duke or other club members. When he was certain the coast was clear, he quickly slipped the note under her door and walked away without looking back. The bus pulled away from the station an hour later, carrying Marcus toward an uncertain future. He watched the small town disappear through the dirty window, knowing that somewhere in those streets, a little girl might be drawing pictures of a motorcycle angel who would never return. The apartment felt warmer now that the heater worked properly, but a different kind of chill had settled over Elena and Lily. 5 days had passed since they'd last seen Marcus. 5 days of Lily asking when Motorcycle Santa would visit again. 5 days of Elena checking her phone for messages that never came. Elena stood at the kitchen sink, washing breakfast dishes, while Lily sat at their small table coloring. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust particles dancing in the air. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt, leaving patches of brown grass visible between white drifts. "Mama, when is Marcus coming back?" Lily asked, not looking up from her drawing. Her small hands moved carefully over the paper, adding details to what appeared to be a motorcycle with wings. Elena's hands stilled in the soapy water. She'd been dreading this question, though Lily had asked it every day since Marcus disappeared. "I don't know, sweetheart," Elena said softly. She dried her hands on a dish towel and sat beside her daughter. Lily's drawing showed a bearded figure riding a flying motorcycle through clouds. "I want to show him my new pictures," Lily said. "I made him extra big wings this time." Elena tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Honey, I need to tell you something. Marcus might not come back for a while." Lily's crayon stopped moving. She looked up, her eyes wide with concern. "Did I do something wrong?" No, of course not," Elena said quickly, her heart breaking at the thought. She pulled Lily onto her lap. You did nothing wrong at all. Sometimes grown-ups have to go away for reasons that have nothing to do with us. She thought about the note she'd found slipped under their door 5 days ago. The warning about the club knowing her past. The apology with no goodbye. Elena had suspected something was wrong the last time she'd seen Marcus. A tension in his shoulders, a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. But why didn't he say goodbye? Lily asked, her lower lip trembling slightly. Elena hesitated, unsure how to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. She suspected Marcus had left to protect them from whatever trouble was brewing with his biker club. But how could she explain that to a 5-year-old? I think, Elena began carefully, that Marcus had to leave quickly. Sometimes people have to make hard choices to keep others safe. Like when you tell me to stay inside when it's dark, Lily asked. Elena nodded. Something like that. I think Marcus cares about us very much, and that's why he had to go away. Lily considered this, her small face serious. But he fixed our heater, and brought us food. That's what good people do. Yes, Elena agreed, her throat tight with emotion. Marcus is a good person. Then he'll come back, Lily said with the simple certainty of a child. She slid off Elena's lap and returned to her drawing with renewed purpose. Elena watched her daughter, wishing she shared that certainty. The world seemed a little darker without Marcus in it. She'd never expected to feel this way about a man she'd barely known, especially one who looked so much like the people she'd once feared. Later that afternoon, while Elena sorted through bills at the kitchen table, Lily approached with determination in her eyes. She carried a stack of drawings in her small hands. Mama, can I put these outside our door? Elena looked at the colorful pages, each one showing Marcus on his motorcycle, sometimes with angel wings, sometimes delivering presents, sometimes just smiling. Why outside the door, sweetie? So, when Marcus comes back, he'll see them, Lily explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Even if we're sleeping or at work, he'll know we're waiting for him. Elena felt her eyes fill with tears. She knelt beside her daughter. You think he'll come back? Lily nodded firmly. He's our motorcycle angel. Angels always come back when you need them. Elena helped Lily tape the drawings carefully to the outside of their apartment door. They arranged them in a colorful display that couldn't be missed by anyone walking past. Should we write something on them? Elena asked, touched by her daughter's faith. Lily nodded and grabbed her favorite blue crayon. At the top of the largest drawing, she carefully printed, "For Marcus," in wobbly capital letters. There, she said, standing back to admire her work. Now he'll know they're for him. Elena put her arm around Lily's shoulders as they looked at the hopeful display together. She didn't have the heart to tell her daughter that Marcus might never see these drawings. Instead, she silently hoped that somehow, someday, he might return to their lives. Seasons changed outside the apartment window. Snow melted into spring puddles. Summer brought sticky heat that made the small apartment feel even smaller. Fall painted the town in gold and orange before winter returned once more, bringing with it memories Elena couldn't shake. Through it all, Lily kept drawing. Her artwork improved with practice, the winged motorcycles gaining detail and dimension. Every few days, she'd replace the faded pictures on their door with fresh creations. Elena never discouraged her, though her heart ached each time Lily asked if Marcus might have seen them while they were sleeping. Life moved forward in small steps. Elena's supervisor at the cleaning company noticed her dedication and offered her a leadership position overseeing 3 office buildings. The modest raise meant 20% more in her paycheck, enough to move them from their drafty 1-bedroom to a slightly larger apartment in a safer building 2 blocks away. "We have a real bedroom for you now," Elena told Lily on moving day, watching her daughter's eyes widen at the small room with actual walls, instead of the curtained-off corner they'd used before. "Can I hang my pictures in here?" Lily asked, clutching her folder of drawings. "Of course," Elena said, helping her tape them carefully to the freshly painted walls. Most were of Marcus, the bearded angel on his motorcycle, who had appeared one Christmas Eve and vanished just as quickly. Summer brought Lily's 6th birthday and her first day of kindergarten. Elena adjusted her work schedule to be home when Lily returned from school, saving on childcare costs. The teacher reported that Lily was bright but quiet, often drawing during free time instead of playing with other children. "She drew this today," the teacher said during a parent meeting, sliding a picture across the desk. "We asked the children to draw someone they admire." Elena picked up the drawing of a motorcycle-riding man with angel wings and a leather jacket. In the background, Lily had drawn a small figure, herself, holding his hand. "Is this her father?" the teacher asked gently. Elena shook her head. "Just someone who was kind to us once." Fall arrived with golden leaves and cooler temperatures. Elena managed to save enough for a small used car. Nothing fancy, but reliable enough to get Lily to school and herself to work without relying on unreliable bus schedules. Life became a little easier, a little more stable with each passing month. But Lily never forgot. Not when Elena bought her new winter boots, or when they could afford a small television, or even when they splurged on ice cream after good report cards. "Do you think Marcus likes ice cream?" Lily asked one September afternoon, chocolate smeared across her chin. "Maybe strawberry. He looks like a strawberry ice cream person." Elena smiled. "Maybe he is." As November turned to December and Christmas decorations appeared in store windows, Lily became more thoughtful. She spent hours at the kitchen table drawing elaborate pictures. "What are you making, sweetheart?" Elena asked, peering over her shoulder at a detailed scene of their old apartment building with a motorcycle parked outside. "Christmas cards," Lily explained, adding snowflakes with a white crayon. "For everyone who helped us. The diner lady, our old neighbors, and one for Marcus, just in case." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "That's a wonderful idea." A week before Christmas Eve, Elena found Lily sitting by the window, watching the street below as snowflakes drifted past the glass. Her expression was serious, almost adult-like in its concentration. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, sitting beside her. Lily didn't look away from the window. "Christmas Eve is coming." "Yes, it is." Elena stroked her daughter's hair, now longer than it had been a year ago. "Are you excited about your school party?" Lily nodded absently. "Do you remember last Christmas?" "Of course I do." "I was so hungry," Lily said quietly. "I went looking for cookies in the trash." Elena winced at the memory. The guilt of having a child so hungry she'd search through garbage still haunted her, even though things were better now. "And then, the motorcycle man found me," Lily continued, her voice brightening. "Marcus. He bought me pancakes and hot chocolate and fixed our heater." "Yes, he did," Elena agreed softly. Lily turned to her mother, eyes serious. "He was like a real Christmas angel, wasn't he? Finding me when I needed help?" Elena pulled her daughter close. "Yes, sweetheart. I think he was." Snow drifted lazily past the window of their new apartment, each flake catching the colored lights Elena had strung around the frame. The small evergreen tree in the corner wasn't fancy, just a $20 special from the grocery store lot. But Lily had decorated it with handmade ornaments and paper chains that gave it a cheerful, homemade charm. "Do you think it needs more tinsel, Mama?" Lily asked, stepping back to examine her work. At 6 years old, she was taller now, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, but her eyes still held that same thoughtful look that sometimes made Elena's heart ache. "I think it's perfect just the way it is," Elena said, setting a plate of sugar cookies on their small coffee table. They weren't store-bought cookies this year. Elena had made them herself from scratch, letting Lily press cookie cutters into the dough and sprinkle them with colored sugar. The apartment, though still modest, felt like a real home now. Elena had found colorful throw pillows at a thrift store that brightened their second-hand couch. A braided rug covered the worn spot in the carpet. On the walls hung framed artwork, all Lily's drawings, carefully selected and displayed with pride. "Can we put out milk and cookies for Santa?" Lily asked, arranging her stuffed animals on the couch for what she called their Christmas Eve party. Elena smiled. "Of course. And maybe some carrots for the reindeer?" Lily nodded seriously. "They have to fly all night. They need energy." Outside, the streetlights flickered on as darkness fell early on the winter evening. Elena turned on the radio to a station playing Christmas carols, and the apartment filled with warm music that matched the cinnamon scent from their earlier baking. "Remember our last apartment?" Lily asked suddenly, looking up from where she sat cross-legged on the floor. "I do," Elena replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" "It was cold there," Lily said simply. "And I was always hungry." Elena swallowed hard. "Things were very tough then. I'm sorry." "Don't be sad, Mama," Lily interrupted, rising to hug her mother. "That was when we met Marcus, the one who helped us." Elena nodded, returning the hug. "Yes, it was." "Do you think he's having a good Christmas?" Lily asked, her face serious. "I hope so, sweetheart," Elena said. She often wondered where Marcus had gone after he disappeared from their lives. The diner owner had told her Marcus had quit the motorcycle club and sold his bike. Nobody seemed to know where he'd gone after that. "I made him a special Christmas card," Lily said, pulling away to retrieve a folded paper from beneath the tree. "Even though we can't give it to him." Elena took the card gently. On the front, Lily had drawn their old apartment building with snow falling around it. Inside was a careful message in her improving handwriting. "Thank you for saving me. Merry Christmas. Love, Lily." "It's beautiful," Elena said, her voice catching. "I'm sure he would love it." Lily returned to arranging her stuffed animals, while Elena moved to the kitchen to prepare their simple Christmas Eve dinner, spaghetti with garlic bread, Lily's favorite. As she stirred the sauce, Elena thought about how far they had come in just 1 year. No more digging through trash for food. No more freezing nights with a broken heater. Her daughter was healthy, in school, and happy. All because one person had shown kindness when they needed it most. The timer on the stove beeped, and Elena called Lily to wash her hands for dinner. They were just sitting down at their small table when a soft knock sounded at the door. "Are you expecting anyone?" Lily asked, eyes wide. Elena shook her head. "No. Stay here, I'll check." Heart beating a little faster. Old fears died hard. Elena approached the door and peered through the peephole. The hallway appeared empty. Cautiously, she turned the lock and pulled the door open. There, on the doorstep, sat a large cardboard box. Elena gasped softly as she took in its contents. Grocery bags filled with food. 2 brand-new winter coats with tags still attached. Wrapped presents, and leaning against the wall beside it, a shiny red bicycle with a bow tied to the handlebars. On top of everything lay a simple, white envelope. With trembling fingers, Elena picked it up and opened it to find a handwritten note. "Kindness always finds its way home.